Well, let me tell you about the time that I first went out for football. Now, because then high school started. High school started to us in the seventh grade. Well, in the seventh grade, I wanted to go out for football, and we lived about 3 or 4 miles from town, out at a little place called Freemanville, north of Atmore, Alabama, and so although I didn't have any shoes or anything, I just went out and got in there and went out and started playing football, going out for football barefooted. Well, I went out for about a week barefooted, and I guess the coach that for Atmore then was Hardboy Pruitt. He was an Auburn star in his football days, and even the the coach then, uh, his wife was the daughter of some famous judge up in North Alabama. But anyhow, they had this boy staying with them, one of her relatives staying with them and playing football. So one day he just one day he just told me, he says, "Well, what size shoe you wear?" Because I guess he was impressed at how hard I was trying to go barefooted anyhow. And he said, "Well, what size shoe you wear?" And I told him 8.5 E and or 8.5, whatever it was. And he said, "Well, just a minute." And he called the boy over that was staying with them, and he just said, "Well, pull off your shoes and give them to me." Well, and then I was just sitting there waiting while we were in practice and all that. Well, everybody else was practicing, and here I was putting on the boy's shoe, and he was barefooted. Well, he went on. He never did come out for football again, but I had his shoes on, and that's the way I started to playing football. Well, I got along with the football team, you know, real good, except after football practice was over, the coach would say, take 20 laps around the field and go home. Well, I took the 20 laps around the field, but my going home was about 4 miles away. But anyhow, years later, that I retired from the Army and was working for the Missile Command in Huntsville, and here was this friend. I had made a friend of mine with this retired submarine chief, and but there was he was the head of the county health department. But I forget his name now. It wasn't Portalbaum, but it was something like that. He had gone to Auburn and had gotten to be a county agent for the health department there in Huntsville, and he was staying at the same motel that I was and Tate was. And so one night when I started to tell him about, I said, well, when I started out, he said, where'd you play football? And then I said, well, started in Atmore. And I said, well, I went out barefooted. I didn't have any shoes. And he said, wait a minute. He says, you were a hard boy Pruitt. And I said, yeah. And he says, now I know the rest of the story. And he says, because the boy that he took the shoes off of is the county agent over here. And he told me what county agent he was. He says he finished at Auburn and got to be county agent over here in this county. And he says he was some relative of this judge, the same judge that his wife was the daughter of this judge, and he was some distant relative. But he says he told me the same story. They coached Hardboy Pruitt. He was staying with him, and he says this character that came out for football barefooted about a week, and then finally the coach just called him over and told me to take off his shoes and give them to him. And then I didn't go out anymore because I wasn't going out barefooted, and I went on back home. And because I'd been staying with the coach Pruitt then, and he says, now that's the rest of the story about that barefoot. But to have somebody that long ago, that I'd already retired from the Army, everything, and got the job in Huntsville, and then for somebody to know the very boy that took the shoes off of, you know, and he knew all about it because the boy had told him several times about the time that the coach called him over and made him give the shoes to me. He didn't know my name, but he just said there's a character that he had to give his shoes to, and but he said, I'll tell him that I saw you in Huntsville. But just the idea that I would meet somebody that long ago, you know, at least 25, 30 years, you know, on down the road. And I thought that was a strange event, but somebody to go out for football barefooted was something else too then.